Hello, everyone. Welcome back to our knowledge sharing official channel. Today we will share you about 14 of the greediest people in history. So, let's getting start. 1. John D. Rockefeller, 1839, 1937. John D. Rockefeller may have started modestly, but his ambitions were anything but small. He founded Standard Oil and, through ruthless business practices, monopolized the American oil industry. By driving out competitors and creating unfair deals with railroads, Rockefeller grew his fortune, which eventually made him the wealthiest man of his time. Despite his later philanthropic efforts, Rockefeller's greed for control and wealth had long-lasting consequences. The aggressive tactics of Standard Oil laid the foundation for how modern corporations operate, and his fortune still influences the U.S. economy through the many philanthropic organizations that bear his name. 2. Mansa Musa, 1280-1337. Mansa Musa, the ruler of the Mali Empire, is often considered the wealthiest individual in history. His greed for gold and territorial expansion made him legendary. While his pilgrimage to Mecca in 1324 is perhaps the most famous aspect of his reign, it's the staggering amount of gold he brought with him that caught everyone's attention. Musa's wealth was so immense that his spending reportedly caused inflation in the regions he traveled through, destabilizing economies for years. However, Musa's pursuit of wealth wasn't purely selfish. He invested heavily in education and building schools and libraries. Yet, his reputation as the King of Gold is a testament to his immense greed for material wealth, making him a complex figure in history. 3. Genghis Khan, 1162-1227. Genghis Khan's insatiable hunger for land and power made him one of the most feared rulers in history. The founder of the Mongol Empire, Khan built an empire that stretched across Asia and Europe, fueled by his desire to conquer everything in his path. His conquests resulted in the deaths of millions and the destruction of entire cities, all for the sake of expanding his empire and personal control. While Khan's leadership helped establish trade routes, like the Silk Road, and connected diverse cultures, his greed for dominance often overshadowed any benefits his empire brought to the world. His methods of securing wealth and power remain some of the most brutal in history. 4. Leona Helmsley, 1920-2007. Known as the Queen of Mean, Leona Helmsley embodied corporate greed in the modern era. Helmsley amassed a real estate empire with her husband, Harry Helmsley, but her insatiable desire for luxury and power led to her downfall. Helmsley famously declared, "Only the little people pay taxes," which came back to haunt her during her tax evasion trial in the late 1987. Despite her conviction and reputation for treating employees with disdain, Helmsley's greed didn't end with her imprisonment. Upon her death, she left millions of dollars in trust to her dog, cementing her legacy as one of the greediest figures in modern history. 5. Ivan the Terrible, 1531-1584. Ivan, better known as Ivan the Terrible, earned his title through ruthless ambition and a reign marked by paranoia and greed for absolute power. As the first Tsar of Russia, Ivan's desire to expand his empire led to brutal campaigns against his own people and neighboring territories. His greed for control pushed him to establish a secret police force, the Oprichnina, which terrorized the population and suppressed any opposition to his rule. Ivan's greed for power culminated in his infamously erratic behavior, including the murder of his own son. His reign left Russia scarred, and his legacy is a dark reminder of the lengths some will go to satisfy their hunger for domination. 6. William Randolph Hearst, 1863-1951. Media mogul William Randolph Hearst wasn't just driven by a passion for journalism. his insatiable greed for influence and control over public opinion led to the creation of the largest newspaper chain in the U.S. during his time. Hearst's newspapers became weapons for pushing his political and personal agendas, often using sensationalist yellow journalism to sway public perception. Hearst's greed for power in both media and politics was so great that he ran for president, though he never succeeded. His vast wealth allowed him to build extravagant properties like Hearst Castle, a symbol of his larger-than-life appetite for luxury and control. 7. Nicholas II of Russia, 1868–1918. Nicholas I, the last Tsar of Russia, held onto power with a tight grip despite the growing unrest in his country. His greed for absolute rule and resistance to reform led to one of the bloodiest revolutions in history, the Russian Revolution of 1917. While his lavish lifestyle continued in the face of widespread poverty and famine, Nicholas turned a blind eye to the suffering of his people. His inability to adapt and his greed for maintaining autocratic power led to the downfall of the Romanov dynasty. Nicholas, along with his family, was executed, marking the end of Imperial Russia and serving as a cautionary tale of how greed for control can bring about a nation's collapse. 8. Cornelius Vanderbilt, 1794–1877. Cornelius Vanderbilt, the Commodore, built an empire in shipping and railroads, and his greed for dominance in these industries knew no bounds. Vanderbilt crushed competitors through ruthless business tactics, monopolizing transportation routes and amassing an enormous fortune. His wealth and power allowed him to control not just industries, but also politicians and lawmakers. Despite donating a portion of his wealth to establish Vanderbilt University, his legacy is overshadowed by the sheer greed that drove him to build a business empire at any cost. His methods of accumulating wealth were aggressive, making him one of the most notorious robber barons of the Gilded Age. 9. Caligula, 1280–41 AD. Caligula, the infamous Roman emperor, was the very embodiment of greed and excess. His reign was marked by extreme cruelty, bizarre displays of wealth, and reckless spending that nearly bankrupted the Roman treasury. From declaring himself a living god to appointing his horse as a high-ranking official, Caligula's greed for power and adulation pushed the empire to the brink. His tyranny, driven by a ravenous desire for control, ended with his assassination by his own guards. Caligula's legacy as one of the greediest and most unhinged rulers in Roman history is a stark reminder of how absolute power can corrupt absolutely. 10. Muammar Gaddafi, 1942–2011. Muammar Gaddafi, the former Libyan dictator, ruled his country with an iron fist for over 4 decades. His greed for power and wealth allowed him to control Libya's oil revenues, which he used to fund his opulent lifestyle while the majority of his people lived in poverty. Gaddafi amassed billions, much of it hidden in foreign bank accounts, while maintaining an authoritarian regime that suppressed dissent with violence. Gaddafi's downfall came during the Arab Spring, as protests against his rule led to civil war and ultimately his death. His greed for power and wealth left Libya in chaos, and his legacy remains one of corruption and self-serving rule. 11. King Leopold I of Belgium, 1835–1909. King Leopold I of Belgium is infamous for his greed-fueled exploitation of the Congo. Under the guise of philanthropy, Leopold turned the Congo Free State into his personal fiefdom, where millions of Africans were forced into brutal labor to extract resources like rubber and ivory. The profits made Leopold incredibly wealthy, while millions of Congolese people were maimed or killed under his regime. Leopold's greed for wealth at the cost of human lives is one of the darkest chapters in colonial history. His actions in the Congo resulted in an international outcry, but the damage had already been done, and his legacy remains one of sheer cruelty. 13. Andrew Carnegie, 1835–1919. Andrew Carnegie's legacy is complicated. While he is often remembered as a philanthropist, his early career was defined by ruthless business tactics. As the founder of Carnegie Steel, he amassed an enormous fortune by paying low wages and crushing labor unions. The Homestead Strike of 1892, where striking steelworkers were met with violence, is a stark example of how Carnegie's greed for profits outweighed his workers' rights. Later in life, Carnegie gave away much of his fortune to fund libraries, education, and scientific research. However, his legacy is still marked by the extreme wealth he accumulated at the expense of his workers. 14. Qin Shi Huang, 259 BC 210 BCE. Qin Shi Huang, the first emperor of China, unified the country through brutal military conquests, but his greed for immortality and absolute control overshadowed his accomplishments. His obsession with living forever led him to commission the construction of an underground mausoleum, complete with thousands of life-size terracotta soldiers, and he sought out elixirs believed to grant eternal life. Qin's greed for power extended to his authoritarian rule, as he burned books and buried scholars alive to suppress dissent. His relentless desire for control and immortality eventually led to his downfall, and the dynasty he established quickly crumbled after his death.
If you any question and want to know about something, you can leave in comment. Thank you for watching. We hope you will get more knowledge